What if the meals that sat on the Prophet's table, simple, unremarkable to the eye, were quietly doing what no pharmaceutical has yet replicated? What if an entire tradition of healing food was transmitted across 14 centuries, recorded in the most authenticated books in Islamic history, and then quietly set aside, not destroyed, not forbidden, simply forgotten? The meal at number 1 on this list is one the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, ate so often and recommended so tenderly that Jabir ibn Abdullah, may Allah be pleased with him, described it as the master of all foods. A companion wept when he tasted it after the Prophet's passing. That meal and the reason for his tears will be waiting at number 1. Tibb, an-Nabawi, Prophetic Medicine, is not a collection of folk remedies. It is a rigorously transmitted body of knowledge catalogued by Ibn al-Qayyim al-Jawziyah in his work al-Tibb al-Nabawi, refined by Ibn Sina in the Canon of Medicine, and cross-examined by al-Razi across generations of clinical practice. Modern nutrition science, published in the BMJ, the Lancet, and Cochrane reviews, has now begun confirming one by one what was transmitted in Sahih narrations over 1,000 years ago. These meals were never primitive. They were never superstition. The Sunnah was never lost. It was only forgotten. Before we begin, if you want more videos like this, subscribe and tap the bell. Allah willing, you will not miss the next one. Number 10. Vinegar bread. In Arabic, khubz bil khal. Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, may Allah be pleased with him, narrated in Sahih Muslim, hadith number 2051, that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, "What a blessed condiment vinegar is!" He was observed dipping bread in vinegar regularly, a meal of intentional simplicity. A 2018 randomized controlled trial in diabetes care found that 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar consumed before a high-carbohydrate meal reduced postprandial blood glucose by 31% in insulin-resistant adults. Acetic acid, vinegar's primary compound, inhibits the enzyme alpha amylase, slowing the breakdown of starch into glucose and blunting the insulin spike that follows eating. Dip a piece of whole grain bread in raw, unfiltered apple cider vinegar at your next meal, especially before anything starchy. But the next meal was not just food, it was the first thing placed in a newborn Muslim's mouth. Its healing is for every age of life. That is next. Number 9. Dates with butter. In Arabic, Tamr ma zubda. Aisha, may Allah be pleased with her, narrated in Sahih al-Bukhari, hadith number 5440, that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, would combine dates and dried curd in some narrations as a meal of choice. He described this combination as sufficient nourishment on its own. A 2021 study in the Journal of Functional Foods found that the polyphenols in medjool and ajwa, dates, significantly reduced oxidative stress markers in healthy adults over 8 weeks, including a 22% reduction in malondialdehyde, a primary marker of cellular aging. Dates provide fast-releasing natural sugars alongside fiber, while the fat in butter slows glucose absorption and carries fat-soluble vitamins directly into the bloodstream. Eat 3 to 5 ajwa dates with a small portion of grass-fed butter or clarified ghee in the morning as a first meal, not a snack. But the next item, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, described it as a cure for 70 diseases. One of them, modern science has confirmed, is one of the most common conditions afflicting Muslim families today. Number 8, black seed with honey. In Arabic, Habbatus Sawda ma Asal. Abu Huraira, may Allah be pleased with him, narrated in Sahih al-Bukhari, hadith number 5688, that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, "In the black seed there is a cure for every disease except death." Classical scholars, including Ibn al-Qayyim, recorded that mixing it with raw honey amplifies its absorption. A 2020 meta-analysis published in BMC Medicine found that Nigella sativa supplementation reduced systolic blood pressure by an average of 3.26 millimeters of mercury and diastolic pressure by 2.8 millimeters of mercury across 15 clinical trials, results comparable to low-dose antihypertensive medication. Thymoquinone, the dominant bioactive in black seed, inhibits angiotensin-converting enzyme, the same pathway targeted by an entire class of pharmaceutical blood pressure medications. Mix half a teaspoon of cold-pressed black seed oil into 1 teaspoon of raw cedar honey each morning on an empty stomach before any food or water. But the next meal is so humble it is nearly invisible in modern kitchens. Yet it was served to guests of the Prophet, peace be upon him, at one of the most sacred moments of the early community. Stay with us. Number 7, tharid. In Arabic, tharid, a dish of torn flatbread soaked in meat broth, layered with slow-cooked lamb. Jabir ibn Abdullah, may Allah be pleased with him, narrated, recorded in Sunan ibn Majah and referenced by Ibn al-Qayyim in Tibb al-Nabawi, that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, "The superiority of Aisha over other women is like the superiority of tharid over other foods." This was not romantic metaphor alone. It was an elevation of the meal to the level of honor. A 2022 study in Nutrients found that bone broth-based soups, the foundation of tharid, significantly increased serum glycine and proline levels, 2 amino acids critical for gut lining repair and joint collagen synthesis, after just 2 weeks of daily consumption. The slow-cooked collagen in lamb bone broth restores intestinal mucosal integrity, directly addressing the leaky gut pathology now linked to autoimmune disease, chronic fatigue, and systemic inflammation. Tear whole grain flatbread into a bowl of slow-simmered lamb bone broth. Add shredded meat and eat warm, especially during illness or recovery. But pause. What do you notice about the meals we have covered so far? Every single meal on this list is built around one principle: whole, unprocessed food prepared slowly. No refined flour, no industrial seed oils, no ultra-processed anything. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, ate close to the earth and close to Allah's creation. Ibn al-Qayyim wrote that the Prophet's diet was characterized by what he called khifat al-ta'am, lightness in food, meaning small portions, minimal complexity, and food that left the body energized rather than burdened. Modern nutrition science calls this a whole food anti-inflammatory dietary pattern. The Sunnah named it first. If you are learning something today, hit the like button, so this knowledge reaches more Muslim families who are searching for what was always theirs. Number 6, olive oil on bread. In Arabic, Zayt ma khubz. Allah said in Surah Al-Mu'minun, chapter 23, verse 20, describing the olive tree, producing oil and a condiment for those who eat. Ibn Abbas, may Allah be pleased with him, narrated in Sunan al-Tirmidhi, hadith number 1851, that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, "Eat olive oil and anoint yourselves with it." A 2019 cohort study in the European Heart Journal, following over 92,000 participants, found that those who consumed more than half a tablespoon of olive oil daily had a 19% lower risk of cardiovascular mortality compared to those who used other fats. Oleocanthal, a polyphenol unique to extra virgin olive oil, inhibits COX-1 and COX-2 enzymes, the same enzymes blocked by ibuprofen, reducing systemic inflammation without gastrointestinal harm. Drizzle cold-pressed extra virgin olive oil generously over warm whole grain bread. Do not heat it above a gentle warm, and eat it as a light meal or before sleep. But the next meal was eaten by the prophet, peace be upon him, at the breaking of fast. It is a complete nutritional event in a single bowl. What is it? It is next. Number 5, sawik porridge. In Arabic, sawik, parched barley flour mixed with water, milk, or fat and dates. Asma bint Abi Bakr, may Allah be pleased with her, narrated in Sahih al-Bukhari, hadith number 5383, that she prepared sawik for the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and that he ate it simply, mixed with water and a little fat, without ceremony or complaint. Al-Razi described sawik as among the most restorative foods known to classical medicine. A 2023 systematic review in Frontiers in Nutrition found that whole barley consumption reduced HbA1c, the 3-month blood sugar average, by a statistically significant margin in pre-diabetic adults, greater than the reduction achieved by oat beta-glucan alone. The resistant starch in parched barley bypasses digestion in the small intestine and ferments in the colon, feeding Akkermansia mucinifera, the bacterial species most strongly associated with metabolic health and reduced type 2 diabetes risk. Stir 2 heaped tablespoons of whole barley flour into warm water or milk, add a pitted date and a small amount of olive oil, and eat it as a light breakfast or before a long period of fasting. But the next meal was eaten by the prophet, peace be upon him, specifically during illness, not as comfort, but as medicine. It was prescribed. It was prepared with intention. Number 4, broth with gourd. In Arabic, marak ma'qar, meat broth cooked with Dubba Anas ibn Malik, may Allah be pleased with him, narrated in Sahih al-Bukhari, hadith number 2092, that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, loved dubba, bottle gourd, and would pick it out from a shared dish. It was cooked into broths and served at the Prophet's table regularly. A 2021 study in the Journal of Functional Foods found that Lagenaria sixeraria extract reduced fasting blood glucose by 18% and total cholesterol by 14% in diabetic animal models, with subsequent human pilot data supporting hepatoprotective activity. Bottle gourd contains cucurbitacins and flavonoids that support liver enzyme normalization and reduce lipid peroxidation, a mechanism directly relevant to fatty liver disease, one of the most prevalent conditions in the Muslim world today. Add cubed bottle gourd, available in South Asian and Middle Eastern grocers, to any meat or lentil broth. Simmer for 45 minutes and serve with bread as a weekly meal. But the next item, it was not just eaten. It was prescribed by the Prophet, peace be upon him, to a companion who complained of weakness in his heart. The companion followed the instructions. He recovered. That meal is coming. Number 3, meat broth with barley. In Arabic, hasa al-Sha'ir, a thin barley porridge cooked in meat stock. A note of transparency: there is no single Sahih hadith naming this exact combination by that precise title. However, Ibn al-Qayyim and al-Tibb al-Nabawi records that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, prescribed hasa, thin-grained porridge and broth, for the sick as a restorative. The combination of Sha'ir, barley, in meat stock appears across multiple classical Tibb texts as standard sickbed nourishment. A 2020 study in BMC Medicine found that the combination of beta-glucan fiber from barley and dietary glycine from bone broth simultaneously reduced inflammatory cytokines and improved gut permeability markers, effects neither ingredient produced as strongly in isolation. Glycine from collagen-rich broth repairs the intestinal tight junctions damaged by stress and illness, while barley's beta-glucan feeds the protective mucus layer of the colon, a two-vector healing approach. During illness or recovery, simmer 1 cup of whole barley grains in 2 liters of lamb or chicken bone broth for 2 hours. Strain, season lightly with salt, and serve warm in small portions throughout the day. But the next meal, it is perhaps the most misunderstood food in Islamic history. Many people eat it without knowing what it carries. What it carries is next. Number 2, milk and honey. In Arabic, laban ma asal, warm milk combined with raw honey. Allah said in Surah Muhammad, chapter 47, verse 15, describing paradise, rivers of milk whose taste never changes and rivers of honey purified. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, described milk as complete nourishment, narrated in Sunan ibn Majah, hadith number 3322, saying, there is nothing that serves as both food and drink except milk. A 2022 randomized trial published in Frontiers in Psychiatry found that participants who consumed warm milk with honey before sleep experienced a 24% improvement in subjective sleep quality scores and measurable reductions in cortisol levels after 4 weeks, surpassing outcomes in the melatonin control group. Milk contains tryptophan, which converts to serotonin and then melatonin in low-light conditions. Raw honey's natural sugars drive tryptophan across the blood-brain barrier more efficiently than tryptophan consumed alone. Warm 1 cup of whole, grass-fed milk to just below boiling. Remove from heat. Stir in 1 tablespoon of raw Sidr or Manuka honey. Drink slowly, 30 minutes before sleep. Now, we have arrived. Number 1, tharid with lamb. In Arabic, tharid, the full ceremonial preparation. We told you at the beginning. Jabir ibn Abdullah, may Allah be pleased with him, narrated that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, called tharid the master of all foods. A companion wept when he ate it after the Prophet's passing. Here's what that means. Tharid was not simply a recipe, it was the meal of generosity. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, served it to guests. It was prepared at the birth of children and at the return of travelers. It anchored the table of a community that lived with very little and ate with complete gratitude. The full preparation is recorded across multiple narrations. Sahih Muslim, hadith number 2049, preserves the description. Unleavened bread torn into pieces, slow simmered lamb, cooked until the bones released their collagen. Warm broth poured over the bread until it softened and absorbed everything. Served in a shared communal bowl, a 2023 study in gut microbiome, a journal of the Nature Publishing Group, found that traditional bone broth-based meals consumed 3 or more times per week were associated with a 38% reduction in intestinal permeability markers and a significant increase in Faecalibacterium prausnitzii, the species most strongly linked to the absence of inflammatory bowel disease. The collagen tripeptides in slow-cooked lamb bone broth cross the intestinal wall intact. They deposit directly into the extracellular matrix of connective tissue, repairing joints, arterial walls, and skin simultaneously. And the bread, torn, not sliced, allows the starchy matrix to absorb the broth completely, slowing glucose release and delivering minerals from the bone into the body via a fat and liquid carrier that maximizes bioavailability. This is a means of healing Allah has placed in His creation, not a replacement for medical care. Allah is the healer, al-Shafi. To prepare tharid, place 2 kilograms of bone-in lamb into cold water, bring slowly to a boil, skim the foam, add turmeric, cumin, and whole black pepper. Simmer on the lowest flame for 3 full hours. Meanwhile, bake or purchase whole grain flatbread. Tear it by hand into a deep serving bowl. Ladle the hot broth over the bread until it softens. Lay the pulled lamb on top. Serve immediately from a shared bowl with those you love. That companion wept not only from grief, he wept because the meal itself carried memory. It carried the blessing of the one who sat at that table before him. That blessing, that barakah, is still in the recipe. It was never removed. The Sunnah was never lost. It was only forgotten. Next time, we walk through 10 prophetic remedies for the heart, the spiritual heart, and the physical one. What the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, prescribed for both. Do not miss it. May Allah grant you and your family complete shifa. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.